On a cold, silent morning, the courtroom doors opened, and every heartbeat in that room seemed to stop. Because for the first time since the fatal shooting of Charlie Kirk, the man accused of pulling the trigger walked into court in person. No screen, no buffering, no distance. Just the raw reality of Tyler James Robinson standing feet away from the people whose lives his alleged actions shattered. His entrance wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was something far more unsettling. Quiet. A quiet that carried weight, tension, and the chilling reminder that this case isn't just a headline. It's a wound, a political earthquake, a nation on edge. And what happened in that courtroom, his demeanor, the arguments, the atmosphere, would ignite a new wave of questions and a fresh surge of fear. But before we dive into this moment, this crucial turning point in one of the most charged cases in recent American history, take a second to support the work we do here. If you're watching this right now, hit like, share this video, and subscribe to Shadow Detective. And tell me in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? And what's your first reaction to Tyler's appearance in court? To understand why this first physical appearance matters so deeply, we have to return to the moment everything changed. It was September 10th, 2025, Utah Valley University. A Turning Point USA rally filled with thousands of students, supporters, critics, and curious onlookers. Charlie Kirk, one of the most polarizing and influential conservative figures in America, was minutes into his speech when a single, devastating rifle shot cut through the air. One bullet, one rooftop, one moment that stunned the country. Panic erupted. Screams ricocheted off the walls of the campus courtyard as medics rushed forward. Charlie Kirk collapsed, struck in the neck, and within seconds, chaos turned into heartbreak. The manhunt was immediate. The FBI released grainy surveillance images, an outline of a figure, a glimpse of a backpack, a silhouette moving across the shadows. But the most shocking turn came from inside a quiet Utah home. Because the first people to recognize the suspect were his own parents, Tyler James Robinson, 22 years old, a young man with no criminal history, no public record of violent behavior, and no reason anyone could understand. Yet, according to authorities, he fled the scene, discarded evidence, and confessed indirectly to a family member before surrendering. His arrest came just one day after the shooting. His name spread across every screen in America, and from that point forward, every appearance he made was through a flickering video window. Controlled, distant, detached. Until now. This moment, the moment he walked into the courtroom, marks the first time the country truly saw the man at the center of this storm. The morning of Tyler Robinson's in-person appearance didn't feel like a routine day in court. It felt like the opening act of a national reckoning. Long before the hearing was scheduled to begin, the courthouse grounds were already lined with barriers, officers, and crowds. Some held signs demanding justice. Others stood silently, just trying to understand how a crime like this could happen at all. And scattered among them were people who came simply because they needed to see the face behind the headlines. Inside the building, the atmosphere tightened with every step. Security was unusually heavy. Metal detectors, armed deputies, additional personnel stationed at every corner. Reporters rushed in and out of designated areas, clutching press badges, whispering updates, trying to secure any angle they could before the courtroom doors closed. And then, inside the courtroom itself, attention hung in the air, thick and unmoving. The benches were packed, prosecutors reviewing documents with sharp, deliberate movements. Defense attorneys sitting stiff and quiet, members of the public watching with wide, uneasy eyes. A few supporters of Charlie Kirk sat together in the gallery, their expressions carved with a mixture of grief and resolve. Even the judge seemed to carry the weight of what this day represented. A case that wasn't just legal, but political, emotional, national. The low hum of murmured conversations faded the moment the deputy announced that the defendant was being brought in. People sat up straighter. Cameras clicked softly, and for a split second, just before the doors opened, you could feel something shift. A cold, anticipatory silence. Everyone waited for the man whose actions had set the country on fire. And then, the door handle moved. The door eased open, and the room fell into a silence so sharp it felt physical. 2 deputies stepped in first, their pace measured, their eyes scanning every corner of the courtroom, and then, emerging from behind them, was Tyler James Robinson. For the first time since the shooting, he was no longer pixels on a courtroom monitor, no longer a faint, compressed image in a virtual window. He was right there, flesh, bone, expression, and presence. He wore a simple jail-issued uniform, the pale color washed out by the stark overhead lighting. His hands were secured. His walk was steady, neither rushing nor hesitant. But there was something about his posture, a tightness in the shoulders, a faint stiffness in the neck, that suggested a man bracing for impact. His eyes moved briefly across the room, not scanning, not searching, just absorbing the reality of dozens of strangers staring back at him. Some with anger, some with fear, some with curiosity, and some with a quiet, unspoken disbelief that this young man stood accused of killing one of the country's most recognizable political figures. There was no smile, no smirk, no dramatic display. If anything, it was the absence of expression that unsettled people most. A few attendees shifted uncomfortably. One person gasped softly, another whispered, "That's really him." Tyler kept his gaze forward as he was guided to the defense table. His attorneys leaned in close, whispering something only he could hear. He nodded once, barely noticeable, and took his seat. But even seated, the atmosphere around him felt charged, like electricity hovering in the space between him and the people watching. This wasn't just a procedural hearing. This was the country's first unfiltered look at the man at the center of a political tragedy. A man whose name had ignited headlines, whose face had triggered outrage, and whose actions, according to prosecutors, were deliberate and deadly. And now, in this quiet courtroom, the world waited to see what would happen next. The prosecution wasted no time. As Tyler settled into his seat, the lead prosecutor rose, papers in hand, expression tight, voice steady, but edge with the weight of representing a nation still stunned. He stepped forward, looked toward the judge, and began laying out the gravity of the charges once again, as if the courtroom needed any reminder. He spoke of premeditation, of planning, of a single rifle shot that struck a public figure during a live event in front of thousands. He described the rooftop position, the escape, the abandoned evidence, and each word he delivered felt deliberate, measured for impact, yet grounded in documentation. To the prosecution, this was not a complicated case. It was a horrific one, a calculated one, and one that demanded the harshest response the justice system could offer. He pressed the point that the state intended to seek the maximum penalty, a reminder that the death penalty was very much on the table. Several people in the gallery stiffened when he said it. A few nodded quietly in agreement. The prosecutor then shifted, touching on the overwhelming public interest, the national security concerns, and the responsibility of the court to maintain transparency. He argued for continued media access, stating that secrecy in a case like this could fuel mistrust, speculation, and conspiracy far more than open proceedings ever could. His tone never wavered. No theatrics, no raising of the voice, just a steady, firm insistence that this case was too significant, too far-reaching, to be handled behind closed doors. He argued that the people had a right to see this process unfold, to hear the evidence, to understand the magnitude of what had happened, and as he spoke, Tyler Robinson stared forward, not reacting, not flinching, like each word passed through the room without touching him. But the prosecution's message was unmistakable. This was not just the trial of a young man, this was the trial of an act that shook the country, and they were preparing to pursue accountability with everything they had. Across the courtroom, the defense team sat poised, their expressions calm but tense, every line of their body language signaling focus and calculation. They had prepared for this moment for weeks, if not months, and now, in the presence of their client, their mission was clear: to protect him, to assert his rights, and to control the narrative as much as possible. The lead defense attorney rose, voice measured, eyes briefly meeting Tyler's before scanning the courtroom. They began by emphasizing procedural fairness, a fundamental cornerstone of justice, no matter the emotion surrounding the case. Every person, they reminded the judge, deserved a trial grounded in facts, not fury. They spoke of Tyler's youth, his lack of prior violent behavior, and the profound emotional and psychological pressures he faced in the aftermath of the shooting. The defense carefully hinted at mental health considerations, suggesting that understanding his mindset could be critical in evaluating culpability and intent. Their argument extended to the question of media access. While the prosecution had pressed for transparency, the defense warned of the dangers of overexposure, of turning Tyler into a symbol or scapegoat before the evidence could be fully examined. Every camera in the room, they implied, risked contaminating public perception and prejudicing the jury pool. Despite the severity of the charges, the attorneys maintained a calm, almost deliberate cadence. Each word was chosen to counterbalance the storm of public outrage, grounding the courtroom in law and procedure rather than hysteria. Tyler remained silent through all of this, hands folded in front of him, posture straight, eyes forward. He neither acknowledged the defense's words nor the murmurs from the gallery. But his presence alone, quiet and contained, seemed to amplify the tension already thick in the room. In that moment, it was clear. The courtroom was a battleground not only of law, but of perception. And the defense's strategy was to ensure that no matter the outrage outside, Tyler Robinson's trial would be measured by evidence, not emotion. As the courtroom proceedings continued, one of the most charged discussions of the day unfolded: the debate over media access. The prosecution argued that this case, already under a national microscope, required transparency. The public had a right to witness justice being served. Every detail, every argument, every motion had significance far beyond the courtroom walls. In their view, shielding the proceedings would only fuel speculation, mistrust, and conspiracy theories. The defense countered with urgency. Cameras, microphones, and flashing lenses, they warned, could distort the truth. Public exposure could prejudice the trial, compromise jury impartiality, and further traumatize those connected to the case. They requested strict limits, controlled angles, and, if possible, restricted access for certain sensitive portions of the hearing. The judge, carrying the weight of both law and public scrutiny, listened intently. Every statement, every objection hung in the air like a storm cloud. His task: maintain a fair trial while respecting the public's right to know, a delicate balance where one misstep could ignite months of legal wrangling, or worse, public outrage. Outside the courtroom, news organizations buzzed. Reporters whispered updates. Camera crews jostled for position. Social media began lighting up with live reactions, debates, and predictions. Every movement in the room carried consequences beyond its walls. Inside, Tyler Robinson sat quietly, seemingly impervious to the arguments that would determine how millions might see him over the coming weeks. His presence, silent and controlled, became the focal point around which the entire debate swirled. In that moment, the courtroom wasn't just a stage for justice. It was a theater of national attention, with the balance of fairness, perception, and public scrutiny hanging by a thread. As the hearing progressed, all eyes were on Tyler Robinson. The man accused of taking a life in a single, calculated moment now sat before a courtroom full of strangers, attorneys, and media representatives. And the way he carried himself became a story in itself. He did not fidget. He did not shift nervously. His hands remained folded in front of him, fingers interlaced, a picture of contained tension. His gaze stayed mostly forward, occasionally flicking toward his attorneys as if drawing silent reassurance from their presence. When the charges were read aloud, Tyler's face remained unreadable, neither flinching nor reacting in any visible way. Some in the gallery found it chilling. Others interpreted it as a sign of composure or resignation. Whatever it was, it left the room unsettled. During moments of argument or clarification, he leaned slightly forward, listening intently, yet his body language remained neutral. No sighs, no overt signs of stress, just a quiet focus, an eerie calmness that contrasted sharply with the tension around him. Observers noted the subtle ways he interacted with the court. A nod here, a slight turn of the head there, every movement measured. Every gesture, or lack thereof, seemed to magnify the gravity of the charges he faced. It was as if Tyler Robinson understood the stakes without needing to speak. The courtroom felt almost frozen around him, as though the very air was holding its breath, waiting for some crack in his composure. But none came. In that moment, Tyler's silence spoke louder than any words ever could. And the people in the room and millions watching from afar were left to interpret it as they would: guilt, innocence, fear, or something else entirely. Beyond the charged atmosphere and Tyler Robinson's quiet presence, the hearing revealed details that would shape the trajectory of the entire case. Prosecutors provided updates on the evidence, forensic analyses confirming the connection between Robinson and the weapon used in the shooting. They detailed how surveillance footage, corroborated by multiple eyewitness accounts, placed him at the scene at the precise moment the shot was fired. The sequence of planning, the escape, and his subsequent attempts to avoid detection painted a picture of deliberate and calculated action. The defense, in turn, filed motions addressing procedural concerns and raising questions about Tyler's mental state at the time of the shooting. They argued for careful consideration of psychological factors, emphasizing that understanding his mindset was critical for a fair evaluation of intent. While no details were confirmed publicly, the mere presence of these motions suggested a defense strategy focused on challenging premeditation and the context of his actions. Additionally, the judge addressed scheduling and procedural issues, including upcoming hearings, deadlines for evidence submission, and restrictions on courtroom access for sensitive materials. Every decision, every ruling became a strategic point, shaping how the case would unfold and how the public would perceive it. For the first time in person, Tyler Robinson's case transformed from a distant headline into a living, breathing legal drama. Observers noted that the hearing confirmed certain facts already known to the public: his identity, his presence at the crime scene, and the seriousness of the charges, but also left unanswered questions that would fuel speculation and tension for weeks to come. This hearing was not merely a formality. It was a moment that reinforced the enormity of the case, the national attention it commanded, and the high stakes faced by everyone involved, from the victim's supporters to the defendant himself. Amid the tension and procedural formalities, there was a human story unfolding quietly in the background, one that added layers of complexity to an already explosive case. Tyler Robinson's parents were the ones who ultimately recognized their son in the FBI's surveillance images. They made the decision that would change the course of this case. They turned him in. Their choice was fraught with heartbreak, fear, and moral responsibility. It was a decision that highlighted the unimaginable weight of parental duty when confronted with a child accused of such a heinous act. Though they did not attend the hearing in person, their presence was felt. Through virtual visits and statements, they maintained contact with Tyler, providing guidance and attempting to offer support in a situation no family should ever face. Their emotions, pain, worry, confusion, were magnified by the scrutiny of the nation. For the observers in the courtroom and for the millions watching remotely, the knowledge that his own parents had taken steps to ensure he was turned over to authorities added a haunting dimension. It humanized the defendant without excusing the alleged crime. It underscored the tragedy of a family caught between love, accountability, and justice. This element reminded everyone present. Beyond politics, media attention, and public outrage, this was still a story of human lives intertwined. Lives altered forever by one fatal moment. The courtroom drama was only part of the story. Outside those walls, the nation was watching and reacting. News outlets dissected every frame of the proceedings. Political commentators debated motive, consequence, and accountability. Social media exploded with commentary, speculation, and heated arguments. For many, Tyler Robinson's first in-person appearance wasn't just a procedural step, it was a symbol of the country's struggle to reconcile political passion with the reality of violence. Leaders from both sides of the political spectrum weighed in, emphasizing the need for justice while condemning political violence. Advocates called for stricter measures to prevent similar tragedies, while others debated the implications for personal security at public events. Public sentiment was raw and divided. Some saw Tyler Robinson's composure in court as unnerving, evidence of calculated intent. Others viewed it as a young man confronting the enormity of the charges against him. Whatever the interpretation, it sparked a nationwide conversation about accountability, responsibility, and the boundaries of public discourse. The case became more than a courtroom matter. It was now a lens through which the country examined itself. Every tweet, every broadcast, every whispered conversation became part of the larger narrative, amplifying the pressure on the legal system to navigate both justice and perception with unprecedented care. This first in-person appearance marked a turning point in the Tyler Robinson case. It was no longer a series of headlines or distant video feeds. It was a living, unfolding trial where every move, every motion, every gesture carried weight. From the judge's rulings to the attorney's strategies, the hearing shaped the path forward. Procedural decisions on media access, evidence submission, and scheduling would influence how the trial proceeded and how the public perceived it. The prosecution's emphasis on premeditation and the pursuit of the death penalty signaled the seriousness with which the state intended to pursue justice. The defense's focus on mental state, procedural fairness, and controlled exposure underscored the legal balancing act that lay ahead. The courtroom's atmosphere, the tension, and Tyler Robinson's composed yet silent demeanor all suggested that the legal battle was only beginning. Every subsequent hearing would build upon this one, revealing new layers of evidence, testimony, and strategy. For the nation watching, this appearance offered both confirmation and uncertainty. It confirmed Tyler's identity, his presence, and the gravity of the charges, but it left unanswered questions about motive, mindset, and the path to resolution that would keep the public invested and the courtroom on edge for months to come. This was the moment when the abstract became tangible. The alleged shooter was no longer a distant figure. He was here, present, and the case was officially in motion. As the hearing drew to a close, the tension in the courtroom didn't dissipate. It thickened. Tyler Robinson was escorted from the room, flanked by deputies, every step deliberate, every movement measured. The gavel echoed one last time, punctuating a session that was both ordinary in procedure and extraordinary in significance. The spectators, reporters, and court personnel watched silently, absorbing the weight of what had just transpired. Questions lingered in the air. How would the defense respond in the next hearing? What evidence would the prosecution unveil? How would this young man, whose life had been irrevocably altered in an instant, face the coming storm? Outside the courtroom, the world waited. Every detail from this hearing would be analyzed, debated, and dissected across newsrooms, social media feeds, and dinner tables. The nation's attention remained fixed, and the story was far from over. In that fleeting moment as Tyler disappeared from view behind closed doors, one truth became undeniable. This case was no longer theoretical. It was human, it was immediate, and it would continue to captivate a country grappling with grief, outrage, and the haunting reality of one fatal moment. This was the first in-person glimpse of Tyler Robinson, the man accused of taking a life in a single, shocking moment. But the story is far from over. Every hearing, every motion, every piece of evidence will continue to unfold before the eyes of the world. If you followed this case with us, make sure to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to Shadow Detective so you don't miss the next chapter. And I want to hear from you. What did you think of Tyler Robinson's courtroom demeanor? Do you think the trial will reveal new surprises? Comment below and tell me where you're watching from. The courtroom doors may close, but the questions remain. And here, on Shadow Detective, we'll continue to uncover every detail, every revelation, and every shadow left behind by this case.